Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Metaphysical Bible Hangout. I am Reverend Sherri James, and I'm the creator of the Metaphysical Bible Hangout, and I am really excited to be with you here this evening. We've got some good stuff going. I should say this ahead of time because if you are watching this on YouTube, it means that you saw this after we completed it. And so make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so that you can get the notifications when the new video goes up. And pretty much consistently the new video is out like Tuesday morning, and you can participate if you want to do the soul work. I think I have my email in the show notes, and so if you want to participate in the soul work, you can do that and email in your responses to the soul work. All right, let's take a moment to just relax and be open that there is a communication that's happening between each of us in spirit. And there is a divine design for our lives. The Spirit desires to flow through us in a new and fresh and vibrant way. And this is one of the vehicles that we're using to hear the voice of God more clearly in our lives. And so what we ask is that the Spirit just come up through us to us, give us what we need to know so that we may be more like our Father, Mother, God. I thank you, Spirit, for each family represented on this call. I thank you for just taking care of everyone while we are sheltering in place or having our own response to this moment in time. I thank you, God, for just the safety of everyone, that no harm can come to us and no harm can come from us. I ask that you help us to make all the right decisions in terms of protecting our health and the health of those that we love. We pray right now for the scientists who are working on this whole thing. We pray for just ideas popping into their hearts and minds right now to help us to solve this so that we may resume our lives, improved, of course, but resume our lives. We bless the families that are dealing with loss right now, whose family members have transitioned, and we send them comfort, we send them peace, and we send them love. And we ask that something happen that helps them to make it through this moment, to help them to find the good in this moment in the midst of so much tragedy. Thank you, God. I know you always hear me when I pray. And so I relax and I allow this prayer to be so. And so it is. And amen. All right. So let's start with soul work presentation. So last week we started with the story of Jacob and Laban. Jacob, at this point, when we meet him, he has stolen the birthright from his brother. He's stolen his father's blessing, neither of which belonged to him, because even though he's a twin, he's the second born of the twins. We're meeting him when he has fled his brother's wrath, and he is living with Laban and marries Laban's two daughters, Leah and Rachel. And now he has reached the fullness of time where it is now time for him to leave Laban, and he goes to him to ask for his release, and Laban, basically plays a trick on him. And we used the poem last week. We said that it says, I bargained with life for a penny. I don't have an author. I think it's anonymous. It says, I bargained with life for a penny, and life would pay no more. However, I begged at evening when I counted my scanty store. For life is just an employer. He gives you what you ask. But once you have set the wages, why, you must bear the task. I worked for a menial's hire, only to learn dismayed that any wage I had asked of life would have paid. And we talked about Jacob getting to that place where he had really settled in his circumstance with Laban. And at least as far as we know, that he couldn't just up and leave, because he goes to Laban to ask permission to leave. So my question, the soul work for you is, where have you bargained with life for less than what you are worth? And I think I phrased it differently in the email, because I've been going back and forth on like what it should say. And I think, how did I phrase it in the email? When life has nailed you to the wall. So you have made a bargain with life it's for less than what you are worth. But now you got to deal with the fact that you have made this bargain. And you have 2 minutes. I have my 2-minute timer right here to help you stay on track with that. Don't everybody go at once.
Well, I'll go.
Okay.
I'm not in that position anymore, but I did bargain for a particular salary and was even asked at the company that I was working with to research how much it would cost to pay a webmaster, research how much it would cost to pay someone to do Facebook, and research the how much to do Constant Contact. So I was the media marketing person for the organization. And I brought back the information that they asked, but they were only willing to give me a stipend to do all three. And I accepted. And I did that for quite some time until it got to a point where it was eating at me, that they were only paying me what I accepted. And it got to the point where I could no longer do it. And I did send the letter and let them know that I was hindering not only me, but them, because they were no longer getting the joy and really getting anything good from me, because it became monotonous, and I was not giving them my best. So I did hand in a letter of resignation to let them know that I was hindering them as well as hindering myself, and I realized I did deserve better. So
that's powerful. I love that. I love that. Yes, 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 yes. Anybody else?
I don't have anything. Well, mine, it would be, I think about a relation. I'm no longer in it, but a relationship that was a 7.5-year time period. And
You about to probably tell my story, but go ahead. It can just be the story with your name on it, but it might be my reality. Go ahead.
So I think
and my story too.
Right.
Okay. 7 years going in, and of course, hindsight is our best friend. But looking back of the low level thinking, the low energy, the inadequacies of the space that I occupied, and didn't think that I was deserving of more than. But it was right around the 7.5-year mark. It was like, okay, enough is enough. I finally get it, and had to let it go. And it was interesting. It was not like I just took a stance and said, I'm done. He actually said, I'm done. I'm like, yay. But the work started once I accepted.
Yeah.
And said, okay, he initiated it for me, but I still have some work to do.
Yeah.
And I can say about it, it's been a year almost now, and we're not friends. However, I've released and I've forgiven, and I do care about his well-being. And so, of course, when we got into this pandemic, I did place the call and said, how are you doing?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, so that would be my closest one.
Yeah. Anybody? That's a good one. That's a good one. I know you got several amens through this, including mine.
Amen. Hallelujah.
Amen.
All right.
God, thank you, Jesus.
Yes. Anybody else? Have you bargained for life for less than what you were worth? And now life has nailed you because of the choice to settle for less than what you're worth. Nisa, you want to go?
There are so many examples.
There's so many. Where do I start?
Oh my Lord. Well, to make the long story short, there was a point I wanted to change. I wanted to change jobs, and because I was angry at how I was being treated, and so I made up my mind. I'm going to quit, but before I quit, I'm going to leave. Of course, I'm going to leave with a new job at hand. And so I handed in my I was sending out resumes, and people were calling me, and I was using my lunch breaks for phone interviews. And one of the firms that called me, and I spoke with the managing partner, and I was like, "Oh, we don't pay secretaries, even paralegals, that much. You asked me for too much." And I was like, "Oh, really?" I said, "Well, we have nothing to talk about." I was like, I said it very powerfully and respectfully, but when I got off the phone, I was just shaking inside. And then a week later, I accepted a position for less money than what I originally asked for, which was lower than what I had even asked for to the guy that I said, "Oh well, we have nothing to talk about," because it had just like did a mind warp on myself
Yeah.
where I disbelieved my own worth, and so I accepted that position. And then and even though I enjoyed the people that I work with, I always felt resentful that I wasn't working according to the market, what I believe I was worth, and everything like that. And then, long story short, here I am now in a position making more money, and I have the freedom to kind of like come and go as I please and work from home. And while I was thinking about that, I realized that I was asking God for a way to work from home, and I have it. I'm set up. Everything is as if I'm in the office virtually at my house.
Mm.
And I only go in to pick up files and exchange stuff. And what I'm realizing is I was asking God for this, but I wasn't, well, I don't know, like I'm saying it in a way, but um, I was asking God for this to come forward where I would have this freedom to work from home,
Mm-hmm.
and having a very laid back supervisor. It's kind of like I'm telling him what I'm gonna do, and but so now I have all this extra time, and it's giving me anxiety because my work is very easy.
Yes.
It's very easy, and I'm like, oh my God, it should be hard, but it's not. My work is easy, and I'm having fun, and I'm enjoying where I am. So now I have to like build whatever is necessary for the next part.
Mm.
I'm sorry.
Yes, yes, yes. Good, good, good. Thank you for that. Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody else? So I have all of the above. Settle for not the right amount of money, settle for the wrong relationship. When you said 7.5 years, this is coffee. I wish it was a drink. It was just, it took me right back to
Yeah.
that space of being in a relationship that I knew was not leading where I wanted it to lead,
Yeah.
but I was willing to stay there.
Mm-hmm.
I was willing to stay there. And you know, the what I tell myself today is that there's no time lost in spirit, because when I think about that time, it feels like wasted time. But there's no time lost in spirit. And that part is the truth. There is no time lost in spirit. But there, those moments come around when it's like, God, I wasted those years. It needs to say try 12. Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Anybody else before we move on? I want to make sure everyone has an opportunity to share. Is there any place where, again, this is what has happened to Jacob. Jacob he has, you know, uh, worked for Leah, thinking he was working for Rachel. He agrees to work another 7 years for Leah. So I'm saying this wrong. He agrees to work another 7 years for Rachel. He marries Rachel, and then they have when Joseph is born, he then goes to Laban, their father, to say, "Give me leave," basically. And that phrase, the reason that we know that Jacob couldn't just up and leave, is that phrase is associated with manumission, where you have a servant and a master. And so something was transpiring in the relationship where he couldn't pack up and go. And so he has to go and basically negotiate his release. And that's how the scholars know that it's the choice of give me leave, and how it's used everywhere else in the Hebrew scriptures. And so we have all been Jacob, where we have taken a bargain and we put ourselves in a circumstance where now we're nailed by life. The choice that we made is now the clothes that seemed like we were willing to wear them are now too small. They don't fit who we are, and we now have to negotiate our release. Anybody else before we move on? Great. Okay, awesome. All right, wonderful. So where we're going to pick up today is we're going to work this is a 3-part series, and we are going to pick up with verse 31 to 38. So with metaphysical Bible interpretation, the first thing that you want to do is you want to read the passage. Hold on. Hang on. So the first thing that you want to do with metaphysical Bible interpretation is read the passage. And what I've been sharing with you is a process where you can make this your morning routine, where every day for 15 to 30 minutes, you can take a passage of scripture and work with it and let the meaning of it emerge. So step 1 is to read, select, read, and study the text. So the selected is Genesis chapter 30, verse 25 to 43. And I'm going to read the whole passage, and then we're going to narrow down on the section that we're concentrating on. All right. And it came to pass when Rachel had borne Joseph that Jacob said to Laban, "Send me away." The Hebrew that's translated there is "give me leave, that I may go to my own place and to my country. Give me my wives and my children for whom I have served you, and let me go. For you know my service which I have done for you." And Laban said to him, "Please stay, if I have found favor in your eyes, for I have learned by experience that the Lord has blessed me for your sake." Then he said, "Name me your wages and I will give it." So Jacob said to him, "You know I have served you and how your livestock has been with me. For what you had before I came was little, and it has increased to a great amount. The Lord has blessed you since my coming, and now when shall I also provide for my own house?" So he said, "What shall I give you?" And Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks. Let me pass through all your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and the spotted and speckled among the goats. And these shall be my wages. So my righteousness will answer for me in the time to come, when the subject of my wages comes before you. Every one that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me." And Laban said, "Oh, that it were according to your word." So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hands of his sons. Then he put 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. And the rods which he had peeled he set before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. So the flocks conceived before the rods, and the flocks brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then Jacob separated the lambs and made the flocks face toward the streaked, and all the brown in the flock of Laban. But he put his own flocks by themselves and did not put them with Laban's flock. And it came to pass, whenever the stronger livestock conceived, that Jacob placed the rods before the eyes of the livestock in the gutters, that they might conceive among the rods. But when the flocks were feeble, he did not put them in. So the feebler were Laban's, and the stronger Jacob's. Thus the man became exceedingly prosperous and had large flocks, female and male servants, and camels and donkeys. All right. So we already said that's a lot. It's like, what is going on? So part of the select, read, and study is that you don't just read just the version that you have chosen, right? So I believe this is the ASV of it. And so when I read it, I was like a little confused about who was doing what. So then I read, I have it down there on the shelf, the Jewish Study Bible, which helped me get a little bit more context. And so I've just put my notes there. Then I read the New King James Version. That helped me get even more context. And so as I'm reading, I'm just kind of making notes as things get clearer. So for example, in the Jewish Study Bible, what came up for me as I read it was that I was familiar with this story from a sermon that Reverend Mary gave years ago. However, I had forgotten the details. Reading this account helped me to grasp the story that I missed when I read the ASV. I learned that there's a folkloristic belief that what animals see while mating determines the appearance of their young. So that helped me to like kind of figure out, okay, what the heck is Jacob doing with the rods and the poplar and the almond? It was like, this doesn't make any sense. Then I went and I read the New Living Translation. And sometimes that's good because the New Living Translation is a paraphrase. So it's not so great for, say, academic work, but it is great for just trying to get a grasp on what's happening in the story. So, and one of the things that I noted, and at this point I've read 4 versions, right? I've read the ASV, the Jewish Study Bible, and the NKJV. When I got to the New Living Translation, what I noticed, again, I'm paying attention to what comes up, right? That's why I'm listening to what emerges in my spirit as I am doing this study. What I noticed was that the story never reveals whether Jacob knows that Laban has tricked him. Presumably, he knows Laban is a trickster because he was tricked into marrying Leah when his desire was for Rachel, but, we don't know. Then I turned to the Anchor Bible commentary, and I share with you what the Anchor Bible commentary is, because the Anchor Bible commentary is an excellent scholarly work that tries to get just to the facts. And so
again.
Yeah, this is the Anchor. So the Anchor Bible commentary, you get 1 volume per book of the Bible.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, my little thing is torn there, but it says Anchor Bible. And so every book of the Bible has 1 book, and some have 2. Like Isaiah has 2, Psalms have 2, different books of the Bible have 2 volumes. But this, it's hard to find these on a free version of this online. There's a lot of commentaries now that you can find for free. This one, which is a little less, not as dogmatic, is not free. I haven't found it anywhere. So I've been building over time, and every year I buy maybe 2 or 3 more. But if there's 66 books in the Bible and some have double volumes, by the time you're done, you've got about 80 books. But each book is like 40 bucks, 30 bucks, right? So this is an investment, right? Okay. So, but what it gives you is that it gives you like the research, because every time you read scripture, there's some type of decision that's being made. And if you're just reading the scripture and you're not reading the material back of it, you don't know why the decision was made, and you're not necessarily getting clear on like what is actually taking place in the story. And so one of the things that became clear when I read through the Anchor Bible commentary, and commentary versus translation, the translation is just the different words. Like, the New Revised Standard Version is going to have more modern language than the King James Version. Right. But the commentary is going to give you the scholarship. So it's going to give you the research that scholars and archaeologists and other people that work in the field have done. And it's going to give it to you in a succinct way that you can think about it. So one of the things that jumped out at me when I read the Anchor Bible commentary was that Jacob knows his value. And it was the first time that I had seen that, because when I read the story, and even had been taught the story by other ministers and teachers, it had been taught where basically Laban is the trickster and Jacob is kind of coming to him hat in hand. But really what happens, it was in the version of the Anchor Bible, in their translation of the scriptures, where it basically Jacob, when Laban says to Jacob, name any wages you want for me and I will pay, Jacob replies, you know what my service has meant to you and how your livestock has fared in my care. Basically, you know what value I have brought to you. when I got here, you didn't have anything. And because of me being here, I grew it. And it's just a different perspective on Jacob, at least that I had been given in any teaching that I had had in my life. And, you know, and I'm not 20. So this is years. And this is why reading across different translations and going to these different sources, you start to draw out different things, because maybe another teacher didn't see this. Who knows? For the little that you had before you came has grown into very much, since Yahweh has blessed you for my actions. So all I do when I'm doing my notes, I type this up for you guys, but I like to write longhand. So I'm usually writing on, you know, notebook paper and writing out like my notes. You know, I'm just kind of making notations and just kind of paying attention to like what comes up. After reading this fifth account, Jacob's shrewdness is standing out. Maybe he didn't know Laban would do what he would do, and he planned all along to position himself to claim the best. Not, you know, sure. The events described in the rest of the account required more than one season. So this was, again, getting more clarity, because if sometimes when we read Bible stories, we don't have a sense of the timeline, and we'll read a text thinking that something happened inside of a few days when actually it happened across multiple years. So that was one of the things. It was helping me with the timeline. Laban is delighted with the terms and promptly proceeds to violate the spirit of the bargain by removing to a safe distance basically everything that Jacob has asked for. And then Jacob finds a way to outwit his father-in-law through prenatal conditioning of the flock by means of visual aids. And again, in conformance with universal folk beliefs. So that just confirms what I had read in the Jewish Study Bible, which is that there was this belief in the culture that animals produce. They were trying to explain, like, how is it that you know, a brown goat can produce a speckled goat? And the going folk belief is that, well, maybe when the animals are mating, the parents are looking at something speckled. And that's why the offspring comes out speckled. But it's this going belief of like, how is it that the offspring can look so different? They didn't have the language that we have with, you know, phenotype and recessive gene and dominant gene. And they didn't have any of that language. And so it was like, well, the mama must have been looking at something when things were going on. The other thing that came out in the commentary is about the Mesopotamian economies. And the reason that stood out is because, and this is what I said on page 238, 239, is that the Mesopotamian culture was very focused on different types of offsprings. It says that the Mesopotamian economy always paid very close attention to distinctive breeds of sheep and goats, as is amply attested in countless business and lexical documents. So non-biblical documents, just business documents that have been found in archaeological digs. More significant still is the country's preoccupation with biological sports, another word for kids, among the species, to judge from the Omen text. And many such abnormalities, both real and theoretical, are minutely described. So there is this interest, and the Bible is a Mesopotamian, or AKA African document. Of particular relevance to the present context is the following entry that scholars found that says, if a sheep has the appearance of a goat, its wool being black, the position of the country will be secure. In other words, Jacob is asking for the best of Laban's flock. And that's what helped me to understand that he's not coming to him hat in hand. He's coming to him with an awareness. If you go to, it's kind of like Constance, like you said, I go to the job and it's like, no, I'm going to ask for the best of what I'm worth. And you can say no, but I'm not going to ask you for less than that I'm worth. And again, I hadn't been taught that interpretation of Jacob. I saw him as being hat in hand. Anyway, so essentially I'm reading across different commentaries. This is part of the studying. Okay. Now to this week, what I did, I went back to all of that material, but this week I introduced a new book. I'm going to stop the share so you can see this. I introduced a new book that I also read called The Hidden, this is probably backwards, The Hidden Mystery of the Bible. They have different covers. I don't know if they still make this cover. They have different covers. The Hidden Mystery of the Bible, and Jack Addington is the author. This is a great book to have, and it's very helpful because it helps with the interpretation that we're doing. All right. I'm gonna move a little bit faster because I just wanted to do that so that you guys are caught up and we understand what it means to select, read, and study the scripture. Choose what it is you're gonna study, do your first read through it, and then go through other versions of it, if you will, different. And I didn't pick these in any order. Like I just went to different ones that I thought could give me information. I wasn't, except for going to the Anchor Bible commentary, I really wasn't methodical in, do I choose the NIV versus the NKJV? I just read different versions to try to get a grasp on the story. But the only two that were, like, I would say super intentional would be Mysteries of Genesis, which is Charles Fillmore's metaphysical interpretation of Genesis. The Anchor Bible series because I know I'm going to get the scholarship, and the Jewish Study Bible because they have excellent study notes in the scriptures themselves. Other than that, I just randomly picked the versions that I was going to read. All right, step 2 then is to identify the key words and phrases. And so I've been telling you that one of the hacks that you can use is to go to Truth Unity and pull up the scripture, and every word that's hyperlinked is the word you need to look up. So, but one other part of that is that then when you're reading the different commentaries and reading the different entries to help you interpret it, remember what I said, like the send me away, that was something that came from, not from reading any of the metaphysical stuff or any of the versions, but it came from reading the Anchor Bible commentary, and them pointing out in the Anchor Bible commentary that the Hebrew that's translated as send me away in this translation, or give me leave in other translations, is associated with a servant and a master. So it was important, and so I highlighted it as something keyword or phrase to look up, because it indicated the relationship between Jacob and Laban. And so the yellow ones are the ones that are hyperlinked on Truth Unity. The green ones are the ones that I'm looking up based on my research. So I made that distinction just so you guys would understand how I'm making these decisions on what to look up. And again, because I didn't know this, I just knew that it was the speckled to spotted, and he was tricking him and all of that. And I was like, okay, I don't know what any of this means. But in the research, I learned that what Jacob was asking for was the best of his flock. And so I'm highlighting what I'm going to look up, basically. And then step 3 for the metaphysical Bible interpretation is to develop your definitions. So when I say look up, I mean, I'm basically going to the dictionary, to the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary and the Revealing Word to pull definitions. So Rachel, this definition of Rachel, where it says the spiritual soul, I pulled from here, from Mysteries of Genesis. So that I found a metaphysical interpretation that I liked better than what was in the Metaphysical Bible Dictionary from reading the commentary that Charles Fillmore did for Mysteries of Genesis. So that's where that one comes from. Had born Joseph, and this goes on, so I won't go back into what we did last week. Let me stop here and ask, are there any questions? Is there anybody that's not following? Okay. So where I want to pick up today is verse 31. What Laban says to Jacob is, what shall I give you? What shall I give you? And Jacob, and so one of the things that I got from the Jack Addington book is that Jacob, Fillmore's definition of Jacob is an idea of the I am identity, which you see there in red. But what Jack Addington has that I thought was helpful is that he says that Jacob, through spiritual unfoldment, later became known as Israel, the Prince of God. But he also said he is the mental or intellectual steps upward. And what it reminded me of is that, like, what's happening with Jacob is that there is this development that's happening with him, that there is this evolution in consciousness that is going on. And Jacob said, "You shall not give me anything. If you will do this thing for me, I will again feed and keep your flocks." So Jacob is not asking for something that's going to bring Laban loss. I want you to get that, because he's asking for the best, but he's basically saying, and I'll stay to basically replenish what you have paid me. You give me part of the profits, but I'm going to stay and do my magic, what I know how to do with flocks, and so that you won't feel any loss from what it is that you're paying me. Do you see this in the story? Mm-hmm. And so he said, and this is right here. Again, it's not, none of this. When you're doing metaphysical interpretation, what helps you, what becomes your limiters are what's in the story. If it's not in the story, then, or let me back up, whatever comes up in your interpretation, you want to make sure that it doesn't, that you can support it by what you find in the story. Okay. So he says to him, if you will do this thing for me, I will again keep your flock. So he's basically saying, if you give me these healthy assets, I will basically replenish what you are putting in my pocket. Let me pass through your flock today, removing from there all the speckled and spotted sheep and all the brown ones among the lambs and the spotted and speckled among the goats. Essentially, Jacob has asked for the best of the flock. In modern language, he has demanded a portion of Laban's healthy profits that he helped create. And these shall be my wages. And then he says, so my righteousness, and righteousness metaphysically means right use. So my righteousness will answer for me in time to come when the subject of my wages comes before you. Everyone that is not speckled and spotted among the goats and brown among the lambs will be considered stolen if it is with me. Now, one of the things that's happening in this story is that Jacob up to this point has been a trickster. So he tricked his brother out of his birthright by pretending to be his brother. He tricked his brother out of the blessing. So they're twins, but Jacob was born, second. So Esau is who was supposed to receive the blessing. And then he instead of, kind of facing the music, he runs off, which is how he ends up on Laban's property. He ends up running off to not face the music with his brother after he is basically stolen. So, and he's done this with his mother's help. So Jacob is what they call, his name literally means supplanter. So and that's why what I got from Jack was important, because he is the mental or intellectual steps upward. There is this growth in consciousness that Jacob has done where he's handling this situation different than he did with his brother. So when he stole from his brother, he fled to avoid dealing with the fact that he stole the birthright and he stole the blessing. And in that culture, the belief was that the father only had one blessing to give, and it rightfully belonged to the oldest son. So by him stealing it, it was a theft of a great magnitude as far as the family unit and family dynamic is concerned. So Jacob, though, is evolving. So he has been nailed by life and he runs. He has been nailed by life and he runs. And then instead of this time running, he actually goes to Laban. This is very much out of character for him. Naturally he's a stealer, right? Or how he's conditioned himself. But now he goes to Laban to negotiate. And he doesn't even ask in a way that would basically diminish what Laban has. He says, give me your best and I will replenish what I take. I will again feed and keep your flock. So it's like coming to your boss and saying, listen, this software that we created has earned the company millions of dollars. I need 10 million of those profits, but I'm not even going to leave. You give me the stock options, or you pay me in the stock options or whatever, but I'm going to stay here and produce so that you won't even feel what you are paying me. Is this making sense? Okay. So he says, so my righteousness, what you're seeing here is that there is this evolution in consciousness that has happened for Jacob, that he's no longer trying to trick his way out of a circumstance. He is actually trying to do things the right way. He's trying to do things the right way. So he says, so my righteousness, my right use will answer for me in time to come. Basically, if ever we got to come back to this moment and deal with what I have, and you think that I have somehow taken from you, my righteousness will stand for me. And if you find something in what I have that looks like it belongs to you, we can consider it stolen. That's essentially what he's saying. This note here is from last week where I was saying, see the Anchor Bible commentaries that we've gone that far. And Laban said, oh, that it were according to your word. The word metaphysically represents the vehicles by which things make themselves manifest. So and I put here just for clarity, Laban, because when I first read it, I thought it was Jacob. So he removed that day the male goats that were speckled and spotted, all the female goats that were speckled and spotted, and every one that had some white in it, and all the brown ones among the lambs, and gave them into the hand of his sons. And essentially, Laban is hiding his assets. It's like you in the movie business, and you want to audit the books. And you're like, you know what? We did this movie, and I'm entitled to some net profits. And basically, they hide the assets. They do some accounting trickery, and you go to audit the books, and they're like, well, you're right. I guess we didn't break even. It's like, no, that's not how this goes. So that's essentially what Laban is doing. He is hiding his assets. Then he put 3 days. The number 3 is metaphysically is the mystical number of unity. Days is a degree of unfoldment in consciousness. He put 3 days journey between himself and Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks. So there's no real metaphysical interpretation here for Jacob fed the rest of Laban's flocks, except to point out that Jacob did what he said he was going to do. So Jacob honored his word. What he promised to do for Laban, he did. Right? That's the only thing. There's no real metaphysical interpretation for that part, other than Jacob did what he was supposed to do. Now Jacob took for himself rods of green poplar and of the almond and chestnut trees, peeled white strips in them, and exposed the white which was in the rods. And the rods which he had peeled, he set before the flocks in the gutters, in the watering troughs where the flocks came to drink, so that they should conceive when they came to drink. All right, so that's the part where we're gonna stop right there. So what essentially we can go by, right? We don't know if Jacob knew that Laban was going to do what he did. But what we have in the story is that, as far as we know, Jacob asked for what he wanted and then did according to the word that he promised. Basically, give me this, which I am rightfully due, and I will do this for you. And then in good faith, Jacob moves and takes action according to what he said he was going to do. And then what he does, and this is part, like what I can deduce from this with the, took the rods of green poplar, and I'd have to do a little bit more reading. I didn't find anything specific in the commentary beyond the folkloric belief that animals produce, or the mating is influenced by what the animal is looking at. But I didn't find any more research beyond that. But what I can say is that Jacob, as an agriculturalist and as an animal herder, understood the science of managing animals. So he knew how to produce results. Even if I don't understand the green poplar, the almond and the chestnut trees, and what I can say is that his results were not by chance. His results were according to a science that he understood. And he knew that he had the ability to make money for Laban, or to prosper Laban. In this sense, not money in the way that we think of money, but money in the sense of what do I want to say? Animals. It was a different currency of exchange. The animals were the money, right? And so that's just we just want to get clear on what's happening in the story. Is there any questions on what's happening in the story? Okay. So what we're looking at metaphysically is that we're always looking at a movement in mind. And when you have gotten to a place like Laban, or like Jacob, where you have essentially an earlier choice or earlier set of choices that you have made have essentially nailed you to the wall. You are now in a place where you are stuck. You told someone, this is the personal situation, you told a family member that you could help them out. And what you thought was going to be a couple of days help, maybe a couple of months help, turns into multiple years. And for different reasons, or whatever they're your reasons, you can't get this person out of your pocketbook, or out of your house, or out of your situation. And so now you are stuck, and you made a choice that in the moment felt like a really good choice to make. But now that you are 7.5 years into the choice, you're like, no. This is not working. We're really going to have to do something different. And the thing is that very often when we are making choices like that, we're not seeing our value, and we're not thinking long term, but we want to do something in the moment. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing, because hindsight is always 2020. We can always look back and see what we should have done, or how we should have made a different choice. But when you find yourself in that, you want to get to the place where you begin to act according to principle, and not just making decisions for the moment. When Jacob makes the decision to go to Laban, this is so against his character, because everything that he's done up to that point is to trick people out of their stuff. So this is a sea change in his behavior. There is some spiritual maturity that he has developed, where he has decided that no matter what, that it is right and good that I have what I deserve, that it is right and good that I am free from this circumstance, and that I shall be free from this circumstance. And I don't need to trick anybody to get out of this circumstance. sometimes when we're trying to remove ourselves from a place where life has nailed us, we try to enact a scheme in order to get out of this tight confine. But the problem is that we set up a boomerang for ourselves because life is always responding to what we're thinking, saying, and doing. And so the thing, our reasons for leaving may be righteous, but if our methods are wrong, we basically set ourselves up. And so what we're seeing with Jacob, what he's modeling for us here in this circumstance, is someone who is willing to do things the right way after spending a lifetime of not doing things the right way. And he's willing to take a chance that it might not work out the way that he wants it to and still go the right way. And we see that it doesn't. Now, in consciousness, what happens is that when you're trying to free yourself from a level of consciousness, everything in your life, those thoughts that have you at that level of consciousness have a lock on you at that level of consciousness. Everything around you supports you being in that relationship or supports you being in that job. You know, you feel like you take a job for less than you are worth, but it's bringing you enough money to keep you on a cycle, but not enough for you to actually leave for a period of time so then you can go and look for something else. And so you stay in the position longer, even though it's not paying you enough money, because if you had to quit and have a window between that job and the next one, or that contract and the next one, you couldn't afford it. You would potentially go under. And so you say, and this is what's happened with Jacob, with Jacob and Laban, is that he is in a situation where it's like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. And the answer for that is to do things the right way. To ask for what you want, to ask for it in an honorable way, and then to do what you said you were going to do. So there's always an exchange. Like he doesn't come, pay, this is what you owe me. He comes and basically offers an exchange. You give me this, and in return, I will give you that. He's asking for an equal energy exchange. I'm willing to work. Sorry about that. And they stopped right outside the window. So he is asking for an equal energy exchange. He's not coming with a sense of bitterness, like you tricked me, you owe me, you made me marry your oldest daughter, you know she wasn't who I wanted. And he's not coming with any of that energy. He's like, listen, you give me this, and in return, I'm going to restore to you so that you won't even feel what it is that you gave me. But the other part of this is that, and this was from one of the commentaries that I read, it would take the equivalent of about 6 or 7 years. So in other words, I will stay in this indentured servitude relationship for another 6 or 7 years in order to earn my freedom. So I'm not even coming to you saying, I'm going to take this today. It would take me X number of years to go through several mating cycles to replenish what you have paid me. So I'm willing to do the time to earn my freedom. Again, I'm willing to give my best to you. And so what he's modeling for us is how are we to respond to those moments where a choice that we have made has nailed us to the wall. And so what he's showing is that we want to approach these moments with a sense of honor and honorableness, and where our honesty will stand for us. And Laban going and removing the animals from the flock represents what happens when we're trying to extricate ourselves from a level of consciousness, that everything around us is locked into that. And so every time we try to get away, it's like the consciousness is reforming itself around us. If you've ever tried to lose weight or change your diet and you're like, I'm gonna give up sugar, and well, I'm gonna just have this one little other piece, you know, I'm gonna try to give this up. Well, you know, I'll just have this over here. And because the consciousness it's rooted in. And so we have to have the commitment or the conviction of righteousness in order to take a stand and to stand on it no matter what. Questions?
I have kind of a comment.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny when I think about past situations that I was in, and knowing in my heart of hearts, okay, I need to get out of this situation, or something needs to change in this situation. And, you know, a lot of times I'll definitely go to God with it and say, God, this situation needs to change. 9 times out of 10, it does. But in a relationship type situation, and I know that it was a relationship or something I need to get out of, I always would say this. I always say it's like, you know, in your mind that you need to get out, but for some reason something is holding you. And the way you put it is a better way than what I put it. I would put it like it feels like I'm addicted, like I'm in an addiction, and you know, like an alcoholic or on drugs, and there's this cognitive dissonance. Mm-hmm. Where you know in your mind that this is not the right thing for you. This is not where you need to be.
Right.
And you're working your way out of it. But I would liken it to an addiction, as opposed to maybe liking it the way you're saying it. It's a consciousness, not so much an addiction. Well, I mean, it can be. They could be one and the same.
And addiction is a consciousness.
And addiction is a consciousness. So it's funny how I was thinking about it in that way. And it's like, okay, I've got to, you know, do my 12 step. I mean, I've never been an alcoholic, never been a drug addict, but you know, 12 steps, and I had to start weaning my way and working my way out of that relationship or that situation. It's, so I really, it made me think of that when you were speaking.
Yeah. You know, letting go of a level of thinking is some of the hardest work that you will ever do, because the thinking produces results, and there's a window of time between when you stop thinking one way and start thinking another way, but those thoughts are still creating. Those thoughts are still creating, which means that they're creating evidence. And so what makes it hard to move to a higher level of thinking is that the thoughts are creating evidence at a level that you used to believe in. And so you have, this is when they talk about you got to get clear on your why. It's like you got to know your why, because there's that window where it becomes very easy to just slip back down into that way of thinking.
Exactly. It's so easy to do that. And it's like with other situations, I'm able to make decisions quickly, or if something's not right for me and be like, okay. And but when you get to these like relationship type things, that addiction, that consciousness is so rooted. It's definitely a physical effort that you have to do to get yourself out of it. The same thing when I used to go on the road and training, and I wasn't getting paid what I was worth, and having that dependency, and it felt like an addiction, and I had to like really physically, you know, wean my way out of it. And then one day, out of the blue, I'm done. It was just like that decision, and it was over. And I'm like, I'm coming off the road.
Now, what got you to that point of decision? Can we dissect that?
I was in Colorado, and I can't drive in the snow. and I had to go. I was on a base, an army base, and I had to go up this mountain, and I needed a 4-wheel drive or chains, and I didn't know how to put on chains. So I wanted to get a 4-wheel drive vehicle, so I asked the company that I was working for of all-wheel drive vehicle. You guys gonna have to pay for this, and they didn't want to pay for it. They refused, even though there was a sign that says you cannot go up this mountain without a 4-wheel drive or chains. You can do it. They were in Kansas City, and I was in Colorado, and they were like, oh, you can do it. And it was in that moment where other moments they would do this, and I would cry and just, and this for something, it's just something that it just hit me like a ton of bricks and said, this is not the way for me.
Right.
And after that, I was done. It just kind of, something snapped. But it was physical. It was like, you could just feel it.
Yeah.
And, but that dependency though, it's a powerful vice grip, and you can feel it. You know what I mean? So, but
so
the
let
way
me ask you this.
Powerful.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you're saying this. I'm glad we spent time here at this moment. So let me ask you, just going back to the story, and then there's no right answer. We're just trying to dissect it. This is part of the interpretation part.
Sure.
What do you think that was for Jacob?
He probably felt the same way, but maybe he attempted to think about it differently or not allow it to feel like that. I'm not sure.
Well, what I'm saying is that he's been with Laban for 7 years to receive to what he thinks is going to be Rachel, and then he goes into the marriage room and finds out that it's Leah. He stays another 7 years for Rachel, and then he comes. Finally, mind you, Leah's handmaid and Rachel's handmaids are having kids, and finally Rachel gives birth to Joseph. And Joseph is imagination. What do you think it was about the birth of Joseph? Because it's at the point that Joseph is born that he goes to Laban and says, "Give me leave." As far as we know in the story, he never approaches Laban before that moment. What do you think that straw was?
I'm going to jump in.
Go ahead, jump in. Go ahead. Somebody was talking, they were really low. I couldn't hear.
When you just said that Joseph was born, because sometimes we need to have the imagination to see more than where we are. And that was like, you know what? I'm worth more than this. I'm not staying here. So any one little thing that comes next, I'm out. We've been looking for an excuse to leave, but because we don't have that inner strength to do it ourselves, let just one more thing, and I'm done. We've been looking for an excuse anyway.
Yeah.
But this was it, and it gave us the really courage to move where we know we needed to move before. But when you said that imagination kicked in, gave birth to, I can see more, I can have more. Why am I still here? So, when you said that's what came to me.
Anybody else? Was that VJ? VJ, what were you going to say?
I just want to say thank you, Constance. Yes.
Anybody else? What else? And again, I want what I'm training you to do is to listen for what comes up, because part of Bible interpretation, not just metaphysical, is trusting what comes up in your spirit. Yeah. Right. So when you think about what got Jacob to that point that he's like, they said line of demarcation, like we're done,
Yeah.
So I'll jump in that I'm taking a class before this in terms of the 12 gifts. And I'm thinking about judgment. Right? And so judgment is when we take that pause and we allow for the divine mind to take over. It is about that moment where spiritual guidance, and we trust. And so we get into the faith, we get into the strength. And I think about what Jacob is doing. He's saying, I'm doing this differently. We already know you did it this way in the first go round. I'm having this experience again. And he's making a conscious decision. And so I think about that's where he's allowing for the pause to come in and allowing for the connection of that intuition, that divine mind to move him in another direction. So he chooses differently this second go round. And he's willing to not only choose differently and recognize that gives him 7 more years, but yet he's still going to be able to receive, 1,000-fold for being able to do that. So that's where I kind of make that connection a little bit more, that we're trusting and we're going to stand in. And so it's playing out the consciousness and the experience of that thinking piece, but it's playing out in the feeling. So now we have the divine wisdom that is really coming into play, and we're seeing that. He's seeing that, and he's gonna own that and walk with it.
Good. Nisa, you were gonna say something?
Oh yeah. I was I was texting. I was chatting. I sent a comment to Constance because that was our lesson, judgment, and I and I said that to her, and then Sandra just brought that up. Oh my Lord. So I've always had a problem with Jacob because of the whole birthright stealing and him preferring Rachel over Leah and mistreating Leah, so to speak, and only getting 2 kids out of Rachel. But I'm really trying to get over just like seeing the story the way it's written, but seeing what it means beyond what it is, because as you said, well, as you're teaching us, like they represent different phases of consciousness, and it's like even again today, rereading the story along with you, I still have that same old feeling about Jacob, that he's a trickster. But then it's revealing through the study that it's Laban who was tricking. Even though I know Laban tricked Jacob the first time, with the reading of the story, my understanding is that Jacob is up to his old tricks again. And then and it's like Jacob, to me, because I always looked at Jacob like he never asks for anything he doesn't think he's gonna get. Right. So if he's asking for it, he's already devised a plan to get it. He just wants to see what he's gonna end up having to do to get what he's asking you for, if you're not gonna outright give it to him. Right. That's the feeling that I got from it. And as Dr. Gina was speaking, one thing that kept coming up is like, it maybe to our conscious mind, we got the reason to leave or to stop a habit, but it's been building up for it to show up. So that's what really was coming up.
I like that.
Jacob is mirroring. He's doing this. Both of them are being tricksters, so they're mirroring each other in the beginning. And it is not until Jacob rises to that next level or higher level of consciousness and saying, I need to do something different. It need not be.
That part. So you okay. Yes.
Oh, that's right. Because you see yourself.
Yes. Right. Ourselves.
Yes. And the thing is that sometimes we get ourselves in relationships where we're going tit for tat. I know nobody's going to admit to tit for tat. But well, you said this, I'm gonna say that, and you're going back and forth. And the truth is that you are both on the same dance floor. Right. And the way out is you getting off the dance floor. Right. And not responding. And is anybody watching The Last Dance? Anybody else? I'm not a sports fan, I'm an excellence fan. The Last Dance is this 10-part documentary about Michael Jordan.
I didn't know that.
Let me tell you, it's on ESPN, and I don't watch TV, so that the fact that I'm watching is it is everything. It is everything. I started watching basketball because of Michael Jordan. I'm not a basketball fan at all. Meaning I like basketball, but I really like excellence. And I'm excited when I see people like level up their game. So it covers a year that was the year leading up to their first championship, but it was not their first championship, their last championship. It was Phil Jackson's last year. And Phil Jackson called that year The Last Dance. And so they named the documentary The Last Dance. But it chronicles the beginning of their story. And one of the things that comes through in the story is that they were a good team, but they weren't a championship team yet. And Detroit was the team to beat. And Detroit, they were like the bad boys at the NBA, so they would beat you up. So you'd be going up for the layup, and they might clothesline you, and and you could really get injured. And the players would respond where if somebody pushed them, they would come back, and then Detroit knew that they had them, because you would be in your feelings, mad that you got pushed, all of that. So they had been working on their mental game. And there is this moment where Scottie Pippen is pushed by, he goes up for a layup or some dunk or something, and Dennis Rodman, who at that point was on the Pistons, pushes him so hard that he falls into the crowd. And he gets up and he does not react.
Yeah.
And then they cut to Michael Jordan said, and that's when we became a championship team.
Wow.
And it's that tit for tat. Laban and Jacob are going for that tit for tat. And probably this relationship, like, we have high points in their relationship because that's how the stories are told in the Bible. But you can imagine they've been going back and forth like this for 14 years,
Right.
at least. And finally, Jacob decides, I'm getting off the dance floor. I'm no longer reacting the way that I have been reacting.
Right.
And that I'm going to come at you righteously, no matter how you come at me.
Yep.
Right.
That's it.
And that's power.
Yeah.
That's when you change the game.
And that's when we're stepping into that unconditional love, that I'm going to love you no matter how you show up. And you know what?
It right
God's got it.
There go my gift.
That's it. And so the thing is that what the ego fears is that I'll be righteous and somebody else's wrong will impact me. And the righteousness is its own protection. Because what we're going to get to next week is that, again, the story never tells us whether Jacob knows that Laban is tricking him. And Jacob basically in the telling of the story demonstrates the science that he used to produce the fruit or the profits that Laban had. And so Laban thinks that he's going to just pick away and hide the assets. But when Jacob goes and does what he has been doing to produce the assets, he's got something to draw from.
Yeah.
And so it's nothing that Laban can do. And the thing is that we have to get that our right use, our right action, right thinking, right feeling, right words, right actions, and right reactions are spiritual protection. They are spiritual protection from any mess that anybody would bring to us. And so the scripture, when it says, no weapon formed against me shall prosper, this was a weapon formed against Jacob, which was that I'm going to hide my assets. You ain't going to be able to find nothing. But the way through a circumstance like this is honestly to surrender to somebody else's mess. And I don't mean surrender like give in, but I mean surrender like not try to fight back. And so when you have to watch this documentary is awesome. Like, it's a 10-part documentary. We ain't got nothing but time. We all sheltered in place, so you got time. But it's so awesome. And that moment when he's on the floor, Dennis Rodman has pushed him. And it's a hard push. Okay, they show it, and it's like that push where you weren't expecting it, so your neck, head slings back, neck pops. So it's a push like you would get up and fight, and he does not fight back. And then you get a voiceover from Michael Jordan that says, and that's when I knew we were a championship team. And I was like, yes, that's it. When you can just be in your excellence and nobody else's shenanigans can catch your attention. It's like, yeah, do your worst, whatever. And from then, that's when they started cleaning up. Then they went is three-peat, and then the next three-peat. So anyway, so my question for you for this week, right? Because I think that part of what I was trying to get at, but I don't know if I did a good job at, is what's your why? And I was trying to get at that with Jacob. Like, what would be Jacob's why that would get him to the place? Again, the thing about Bible stories is that they don't give us the way they don't write the way that we write today. So we don't always know all of the inner machinations and things that people think about. Some of these things have to be inferred from the story because it's not so much on the page. and the way we balance the inference, meaning that we don't kind of go off the deep end with what we're thinking, is that it's got to fit within the parameters of the story. So my question would be like, what would be Jacob's why for being willing to stop being a trickster and to basically take right action as opposed to what he had been doing? You know, what might have happened? You know, maybe it was, I mean, this is Joseph is the first child that that Rachel has. So, and she is, according to the story, his beloved. Maybe that was something. Maybe he felt like, you know, Joseph became his sign from God. You know, that, you know, everything, not that he didn't love the other children, but he finally gets the woman that he loves, and now she's barren. And he's got all these other kids, and she can't produce. So maybe the fact that she became fruitful in terms, physically fruitful in terms of having, giving birth to Joseph, that meant something to him, that was a sign or something. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know. There's nothing in the story that says that that's what it is, but again, we're just trying to look at what's going on, because whenever you see behavior change, there's something has happened mentally to change that behavior. And so then my question to you, and this is the soul work, is what's your why? Because all of us are evolving in consciousness, and all of us are in some circumstance somewhere where we are nailed to the wall by life, by a previous choice. And now we must rise like Jacob. Right action, right reaction, right words, right thoughts, right, no matter what.
Wow.
So that's,
you know, Reverend Sherri?
Yes.
While you were saying that, it was coming up for me, like, you know, sometimes how you can see a young couple that have children,
yes,
and unplanned and everything like that, and then as soon as they have that child, some of them, like, they rise to the occasion, and they become 100%, like their potential just flow out of them. And then others, you know, like, it takes them a while to find their parental sea legs, so to speak.
Yep.
And I was thinking about, like, what's your why, or what's my why? And the first thing that came out of my head was, I don't want to be this way anymore. And then as soon as I thought that, I was thinking, well, I can't create from a negative position. It's got to be from a positive position.
Right.
And then we were talking about how when we make the judgment, it's because of what we see in ourselves. And I was thinking about how I keep seeing the trickster in Jacob.
No, you're a trickster, neat.
I'm telling on myself.
No.
Oh Lord. Okay.
I reject that.
I'm not gonna give full disclosure, but
I'm gonna reject that.
But it's like, you know, because sometimes I do feel like I am a little bit shifty. And and I don't, and it's not like I do anything. No, let me not try to correct it. And I don't really know where this comes from. And like my friends and I, we play about that a lot. Because I say, well, wherever I am, I always have 3 stories that are equally plausible for why I am where I am, wherever I am at any time. And
I love that.
And and it's like, and like, I don't know what it is. And it's like, and it's not also that I'm double speaking. I really am trying to figure out, like, the deep reasons behind that.
Right.
Like, where I could stand, like, I stand in many places at the same time. But
Right.
I don't know if that's wrong or right, but it just doesn't feel right innately to me.
Right.
But to go back about the trickster thing, it's like, I think, like, coming into this teaching about you know, how we create our own reality,
Mm-hmm.
and nothing happens to us. It's really the result of our own making.
Mhm.
And so when I'm saying like I want to learn more so I could experience more God, I really want to have the best life.
Right.
And so I think in the back of my head, I'm thinking, well, you still want to use God to get what you want. But the thing is, that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So like I always had a little bit of a feeling like, well, I'm using religion. I'm not really religious or really spiritual. You know what I mean? So it's very materialistic of me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I feel like in the
Yes,
background.
yes, yes, yes. I understand that. I understand
Mhm.
that. So it you will need to settle within yourself that it is right and good for you to be happy.
Mhm.
And I mean this for everyone, me included. That because I work with this because I'm very ambitious, and since I learned what a billionaire was, I thought I should be one.
Mhm.
All right.
Oh, so then I got this minister, and so I work with that all the time. Okay. So so one of the things that I have come to understand is that when I am at my happiest, I'm also in the zone, and God is able to do the greatest work through me.
Mhm.
And when I'm at my saddest, God can't do nothing through me because I ain't got no energy to move. I ain't got no energy to get up. I don't feel like it. I'm not productive. You think about how you feel. Yesterday was one of those days, and not that I was sad, but I did a Zoom meeting. I thought it was so excellent. They did a check-in, but they said, this is how we're going to check in. If you were a day, if you were weather, what kind of day would you be? Would you be sunny with cloud? And I was like, that's so cool. I'm gonna use that on the next Zoom meeting I have. But what I realized was that I wasn't sunny, and that bothered me. I was kind of like one of those like June gloom or May gray days, or gray, where it's not raining, but the sun ain't out, right? Is that kind of day. And part of it has just been struggling with like homeschooling. Like the homeschooling has been kicking my butt. Like it's just, today was one of those days, like I didn't get any of my stuff recorded today because we were literally like struggling to get 2 sentences written for 4 hours. And it was like, this is,
No, like don't feel bad. A lot of parents are going through that right now.
like this is some painful stuff. Like, and so, but my point is that I'm not my most productive when I'm broken down like that.
Yeah.
So why would a good God require me to suffer in order to be glorified? You're not even getting my best. I can't bring you my best teaching. I can't bring, because part of why the sermon couldn't get written is that I'm just in this space where I'm frustrated. I can't get this kid to write these sentences. I'm not going to write them. And, and they got to be turned in because they're due today. And so it's right. No good God that wants your best serving humankind is going to require you to be at your worst in order to get it. And so that helped me to get that it is right and good that I should have all the money that I require. And I say it that way specifically. I learned that from Reverend Della, the money that I require, not that I need, that I require. Because I got what I need, but I require, a certain level of living that's comfortable for me, that feels good for me. So just, work with that and make it okay for yourself to have. The second thing is that we all have a shadow side. And part of growing spiritually is embracing the shadow side. The parts of ourselves that are petty, that are, that don't feel good if you see somebody succeed. Like I would love to tell you every time I see somebody succeed, but sometimes I don't. Coming out of the entertainment industry was really hard to watch my peers who we were all here together. And then when I switched over into ministry, and now they're the ones at the Oscar. That's not easy. That's not the easiest space to be in. So again, we all have a shadow side to embrace and
be okay with.
Okay with, really, and love. Because that's really it. The shadow side is just the place where the light has not been shined.
Exactly.
The shadow is just the place where the love has not yet traveled. Right. So it's that you embrace it and you love it, because you are, the love dissolves the envy, the love dissolves the disappointment, the love dissolves the shame, love dissolves all of the negative emotions that we all have. And I find that I prefer to tell the truth about those emotions, so that I can be free of those emotions. All right. So what's your why? That's your soul work for this week. What is your why? And I'm saying that because you're going to need something that when the Laban part of your consciousness starts doing its trickery to keep you at that level of consciousness, how are you going to be like Scottie Pippen and not fight back? Okay.
Wow.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes. If you would like to support the Bible Hangout, get some of the merch. I put the link in the thing. You can go to the store. I have these awesome mugs with the logo on it, and a mug that says, "I am my own miracle." Very excited about it.
I got it, Laban. Thank you so very much.
Yes. Thank you so much. So next week, we're going to wrap up this story, and we're going to finish the rest of the story where Jacob does the stuff with the leaves and the trees and all of that stuff. And we will finish that interpretation. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Bye.
Good night, all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.